Welcome to the Girlfriend God Podcast, a podcast in search of and in service to the divine feminine, bringing you an equal mix of academic research and emotional spiritual experience. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment. If you enjoy this podcast, share it with your friends, rate and review it if you're listening on a streaming platform. Follow on social media on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. Now, let's get in the flow. Okay, so welcome to another episode of the Girlfriend God. Today, I am really excited to welcome Dr. Glenys Livingstone. Glenys Livingstone has been on a goddess path since 1979. She is the author of PaGaian Cosmology, Reinventing Earth-Based Goddess Religion, which fuses the indigenous traditions of old Europe with scientific theory, feminism, and a poetic relationship with place. Her new book, A Poiesis of the Creative Cosmos, celebrating her with PaGaian Sacred Ceremony, documents the synthesis of her work over the past decades. She is the author of the children's book, My Name is Medusa, and co-editor of the anthology, Re-visioning Medusa, From Monster to Divine Wisdom. Love that title. Glenys has contributed to 11 other anthologies, including Goddesses in World Culture, edited by Patricia Monaghan, Foremothers of the Women's Spirituality Movement, edited by Miriam, Robbins, Dexter, and Vicki Noble, and Goddesses in Myth, History, and Culture, edited by Miriam, Beavis, and Helen Hye-Sook Hwang. Did I pronounce that correctly? Okay. In 2014, Glenys co-facilitated the, is it Mago?
Mago,
the Mago Pilgrimage to Korea with Dr. Helen Hye-Sook Hwang, and she produced PaGaian Cosmology Meditations CDs, and she teaches a year-long online course called Celebrating Goddess and Cosmogenesis in the Wheel of the Year for both the Northern and Southern hemispheres. Dr. Livingstone, welcome to the show. That is an impressive resume, I gotta say.
Oh, did I do all that?
Right? When you hear it out loud, you're impressed with yourself, right?
Who's that person? I'd like to meet her.
Right. So I guess first I want to ask about, so, from our correspondence, you've been on my colleagues' shows, you've been on Dr. Ionescu's show, The Goddess Project, and you've been on Liz Kelly's show, Home to Her. So you've talked quite a bit about your new book, A Poiesis of the Creative Cosmos. My question is, so is it kind of reflect, because I haven't really looked at the new book very much, although I've read a significant portion of the first book. Yeah. How is it different? Is it a lot of reflection? Is it a revision? How have your beliefs changed since you wrote the first book? Let's talk about that.
Okay. Let's see. It's probably all of those things. There were certainly things that needed updating. Over time, things evolve and change and deepen my understanding. There were things that I became aware of after I published this one that came in stronger, that that I incorporated into my course, with my students, but it wasn't in this book. And so there's that. It needed updating. There was also, I needed to document what had happened since this one,
Right.
And I was actually surprised as I wrote the new one that, I would refer sometimes to this one. I didn't want to put it in the new one there are some things that went into the new one with editing and updating, and there was some things that I just didn't want to put in here and say it all over again, so I just referred to here. The first one, like PaGaian Cosmology, was really the outcome of my doctoral thesis.
Right.
And so I completed my doctorate in social ecology, a study of the female metaphor and her embodiment in seasonal ritual. I can show you the big tome. Look, this was the days when before we digitalized everything.
Right, right. When you used to have
this was the doorstop, right? That's it.
Right, right.
And it says, the female metaphor, Virgin Mother Crone of the dynamic cosmological unfolding, her embodiment in seasonal ritual as a catalyst for personal and cultural change.
That's quite
6
a subtitle.
lines, right? I was very pleased. I was very pleased when they had to read that out at the ceremony, the graduation ceremony, that it took up space. We took up a lot of space.
I bet.
Anyway, so that was the doctoral thesis, and that's great. And I wanted to turn it into a book, and I sent it off to various publishers,
which is very common, right? I mean, a lot of people take their doctoral dissertation or thesis or whatever and turn it into a book. I mean,
but I didn't know what to call it. I mean,
right,
it had I say you can't publish a book with that many words in there.
right.
And so it was only after my partner and I had this synergistic conversation in the kitchen, and I was, in Starhawk, I was co-hosting Starhawk out here in Australia, and I was very conscious that I was grounded in what Starhawk had taught me as the pagan tradition, but I identified as a Gaian spirituality, which I'd gotten from Charlene Spretnak's Gaian spirituality. And so he was saying, he says, well, what about, why not call it PaGaian? And the lights went on.
Right.
That's it. And I said, and it's a cosmology, it's not, it's about a place. So it's a PaGaian cosmology. So that's where we sort of, back in 2003, we coined that at the end of it. And then suddenly it had a name, and I was able to put the book, I was able to redo, it into that, with that title. And
right.
So this one was really the outcome of the doctoral thesis.
Right.
And I really needed to, so, about 2011, I became conscious that I needed to do a new book, So 2011 took 12 years, but it needed to take 12 years because I still had to,
Right.
Add, yeah. And
we grow, right? I mean, it's part of your own spiritual path. So, and we evolve and we learn new shit and we figure stuff out, or we go, you know what I mean? It's an ever evolving process, right? You can't get it wrong and you'll never get it done. So,
yes, that's right. Yeah.
Sometimes we have to revise our old ideas. So,
yeah.
So, PaGaian. So tell me, let's talk about, so what are the actual differences between pagan, which is a very broad term, and what's the difference between pagan spirituality or a pagan belief system versus a Gaian belief system?
Right. Well, of course, you see, I do understand PaGaian as, under the umbrella of pagan, although when I presented a paper at the Parliament of the World's Religions in 2009, I couldn't decide whether I wanted to be in a goddess category or the pagan category.
Right.
And in the end, I went into the pagan category because, it would just be a bigger umbrella.
Right.
Although, certainly... Anyway, so pagan is definitely not necessarily inclusive of goddess spirituality.
Right.
Not necessarily. And sometimes, where the god actually dominates, in pagan stories often.
Right. I mean, I think that depends on who you ask. Like here,
Yeah, it does.
like in the United States, I mean, pagan really means anything other than the three main Abrahamic religions.
Yes,
Right.
yes. It includes a lot.
Right.
Yes. Diverse, very diverse. And that's good.
Right. But some people here who are limited in their knowledge or who are kind of, you know, ignorant, and I don't mean that as a derogatory term, I mean they just don't know.
Yes.
You know, they assume that all pagans are witches, and that's not,
Yes.
you know what I mean? Like they just kind of lump everything together into one view. But I think you're right. I think in pagan culture in general, there's still a dominance on the gods versus the goddesses.
I'm just gonna let my cat in.
Okay.
It's unusual for him to want. Oh, he's gone away. It's unusual for him
like,
to want.
never mind.
Yeah, you probably said, "Oh no, she's talking to somebody. I don't want to go in there."
Right, right.
So sorry. Yeah. So
That's okay.
yeah. No, what you're saying is quite correct. You know, it's a broad umbrella, and it's the same true everywhere, I think, and certainly here in Australia. So the pagan community does, you know, it is very inclusive of great diversity. I guess I was at that stage. I was identifying as Gaian in particular, because it very consciously included the scientific,
Right.
the Western scientific story of the universe. Right. And I think it was Charlene Spretnak who wrote an article called Gaian Spirituality in the Woman of Power back in, I don't know when it was, 1990 or something. And that was what I identified with it. But that was, you know, it was the Western scientific perspective, the universe story. I was very passionate about the universe story and the work of Brian Swimme and Thomas Berry. And that was part of the, you know, the doctoral thesis. What I was doing was I synthesized the three qualities of cosmogenesis with the three qualities of the goddess.
Right.
And that was my synthesis and of those qualities. And it was a return of goddess to the status of the dynamic that unfolds the universe.
Right.
And so that was very Gaian. It was Gaian. It had female metaphor, decidedly exclusively female metaphor.
Right.
Any gods were included in that, but
right.
because she births all, you know, she births all. So as my partner would put it, the brotherhood was included in the motherhood.
Right. So in my own kind of worldview, right?
Yes.
I call it the diamond head god theory. And what I mean is, although I believe that there are legitimately many goddesses, I believe that they are all facets, like a diamond has many facets, that they are all facets of the one. I call myself a monotheist because I believe in a singular source.
All right.
Right? I believe in a singular source.
Right.
That there is one source, one primordial goddess, one creatrix of everything. Mm-hmm. Universe, other universes, us, shit we don't even know about, shit we can't even understand. You know what I mean?
Yes, yes.
It's like that, you know, that she was here when here wasn't even a place.
Yes,
right. The time beyond time, the time before time, the time before understanding.
Yes.
She was,
which of course, you know, a lot of the
alpha and she's the alpha and the omega.
Yeah, and a lot of ancient myths, you know, speak of that. You know, Namu, the primordial ocean, and you know, that before it all got split up into bits.
Right.
But and what you're saying, I mean, Maria Jimbudas would be, you know, that she would say yes, that these, you know, the snake goddess, the bird goddess, they're all aspects of the great goddess.
Right.
you know, and but the only difference there, you say you call yourself a monotheist, and I understand what you mean by that, that there's one source.
I'm an essential monotheist. I've been called an essential monotheist.
Yes,
Yes.
very good. Oh, an essential monotheist, very good. Of course, I'm very strong, and I say in PaGaian Cosmology, as you probably know, that this is not a theism of any kind. It's not a theology, it's not a theism, it's not a panentheism. It's about a cosmos, it's about a place. So we do, from my perspective, it is all, there's one great source, one origin that is ever present.
Right.
And you call it the universe, you call it the great goddess, but it's an omnipresent origin, and it is one. And then I talk about it as having three qualities of unfolding, and then there's multiple, as you
Right.
say, multiple aspects, multiple facets to it. Yes.
And it never ends.
No, it never ends. That's part of the thing about my work. It's about cosmogenesis. We now know, and it's really recent information for humans,
Right.
that we live in a cosmogenesis, an unfolding universe.
Right.
It's not
Right.
static. It's not, and that's one of the big changes that's going on, whether people are aware that we are now aware that it's not a static cosmos we live in.
Right. That the universe is expanding. Right.
Yes, and it's unfolding and moving on all the time.
Right. And that's why I find I read a lot about, and I watch a lot of videos on YouTube and stuff about things where there's a combination of science and spirituality that really fascinates me. I watched part of it was like a short, I can't remember I wish I could remember what it was called. But I don't, and because I need to take notes and I don't, and you know how it is. But it was a piece about, they did research about prayer and the power of prayer, but they did the scientific research where the areas of the brain that light up are the same areas of the brain that light up when you do cocaine and when you drink alcohol, and it was the pleasure center, and it was the same parts of your brain get activated. And I think that's fascinating, right? That's fascinating to me.
Well, one of the programs I was part of at the 2009 Parliament of the World's Religions was one where that was done by Anne Benvenuti and Elizabeth, can't remember, but it's up on my website. A little bit about that particular paper, but it was about what you're talking about. It was and I was their case in point.
Oh, nice.
The ceremony, doing ceremony, and what that does to your mind, right. Ritual, prayer, and where the brain is activated, and and how that is mind shifting,
Right. Because it creates new synapses in the brain. Right. That's what ritual does.
Yeah.
I mean, I spent some time, I've done a lot of things, and of course I spent some time as a practicing witch, and and these things are real. I know because I've experienced them for myself, and it blows my mind, and I get excited, and I will, if somebody gets me talking about it, after a while they're like, okay, I didn't mean to get you on this tangent that you're now on.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the things about PaGaian cosmology, when I, in my course and everything, is that it's not about it's about an action of ceremony, of you doing it. It's not just talking about ceremony. It's actually, doing it is really important. Because creating the altar itself is a ceremony, but but the ceremony is where the change happens.
Right.
My supervisor used to say, "Oh, we practice like we know it until we come to know it." So
right.
It's sort of like you fake
it till you make it.
Yeah, it's a bit like that. I'm sorry to
Yeah,
say.
yeah.
But it's kind of like, well, we address the great cosmos as if we are, well, it is, we are in conversation. In ceremony, we are in conversation with our place in a conscious way. I mean, we can be in conversation with our place anytime, but we create a special space for that, and we take so the essential things of life, and we address the cosmos. And so even though, and I feel like for all this ceremony that I've done for decades, I'm at a phase in my life now where continuing to deepen my understanding of what I've been talking about.
Right.
It's sort of like to get a feeling. I mean, because I and many of us grew up in a culture that's so alienated, we actually do not know how alienated we are from our place and from a relationship with where we are and who we are.
Right.
And ceremony is a practice of trying to, of feeling, sensing,
right,
where all of that.
Right. So, and it's interesting that you say that. So when I was in Pittsburgh, one of the things I started doing at the suggestion of someone else who was she was a big advocate for knowing about the land on which you lived.
Right, yes.
And knowing the energy that place held. Who lived there before you? Who, not just what indigenous tribes' land was it, but who was there before that?
Yes.
Or was there ever a battle fought there? Was there, you know what I mean? Just like learn about the place in which you live, because it holds the energy of everything that happened there before you got there.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? And then learn how to harness that and work with that energy. Right? Maybe there's some healing that needs to take place there that maybe you can help with. Or maybe there's some energy there that you have no business like messing with. Or you know what I mean? Like, and I had never really thought about that before. And that's a recent discovery, right? I mean, that's within the last 5 years. I just moved back to Champaign from Pittsburgh in 2021. So yeah, it's like they're always, and I agree with you that so much of what we talk about, it's like, well, like at some point you have to take some action.
Yes.
Spiritual growth doesn't happen from the couch.
Yeah, well, you see, and you can talk about eating the pear. You can talk about eating the pear, but eating the pear, you have to eat the pear.
Right. Right. You can, there's somebody that I listen to that always uses the analogy of you can make the lines in the carpet with your vacuum cleaner, but it's not the same as when you plug in the vacuum cleaner and actually vacuum the carpet.
You actually do it. That's right.
Right. So, okay. So speaking of this sense of place, this is a nice segue into something that I wanted to ask you about. So I recently formed this nonprofit organization called Church of the Goddess. And one of the things that this nonprofit hopes to accomplish in the future, and I mean like, this is like a 10, 20-year goal.
Yes.
We would like to purchase old churches, because in the United States, people are leaving the church in droves. More and more people identify as atheist, agnostic, not religious, but spiritual, and so on and so on. Those statistical numbers go up every year. And as such, churches as businesses are going out of business, which means their buildings, their churches are on the real estate market. So we would like to buy up these churches and make them churches of the goddess with kind of a loose religion that isn't really a religion, but just kind of an umbrella for all goddess paths, right?
Yeah.
Because the women that I have talked to So I grew up Catholic, right? Which
You survive. You're a survivor.
right. It's a 27-step program. And so I am a recovering Catholic. And many of the women that I know that walk a goddess path are. And we all are our goddess path. We all identified with the Virgin Mary first, right? Because she was the only woman we had as to form any kind of an attachment to in the Catholic pantheon, right?
Right.
But the other thing that Catholics were really good at was the pageantry and the ritual.
Yeah. It's
right?
good pagan training. I did it for a period of time, and it was good training.
I mean, the candles and the incense and the stand, kneel, sit, just all of that. So we miss that.
Yes.
And there's something about having a place. And I thought that maybe it was just me, but then when I started talking to other women and they were like, yes, I want that. I want a place where I can't speak for anybody else. For me personally, I want a place where I can go and pray and worship and silently meditate and just kind of breathe in the life of the goddess loving community to which I belong and meet with my sisters week after week and month after month and year after year. I mean, that is a desire in our community, and that's where this organization was born from. However, the pushback I anticipate is then you're just recreating the same structure that we sought to escape.
Yes. Because, I mean, the buildings themselves, are designed with a certain cosmology in mind.
Right, but I feel like I'm taking it and turning it on its head. I don't feel like I'm rebuilding the same structure.
Yeah, you could reorganize the space. I mean, back in the old hippie days when we used to be doing, I was Catholic for a while, as I say, and we used to do, we were allowed to take over the mass on Sunday afternoon, and it was folk mass. And so we would reorganize the pews, reorganize the whole thing, so they were different. So you can reorganize the space,
Right.
You can just throw out the pews if you want to and have cushions or whatever. But yes, you could reorganize the space.
Right.
But I know what you're saying about a space too, because when I started doing the seasonal ceremonies seriously, like religiously, every 8 of them, and I didn't really have a place. And I did talk about that in PaGaian Cosmology.
Right.
But I was able to, I was young enough that I could, pick everything up and set up a whole space and create the space. But, at some point, my partner moved in and he wanted to build a place.
Right.
So he actually did build Moon Court, which was the ceremonial space.
Right.
And from 2008 on. So, and
you still have that space now, right?
Well, we sold because I wanted to move after, decades of being in that one place. And so about 2017, I became aware that I wanted to be closer to my mother, who was still living in my homelands, which is where I am now.
Okay.
And so the desire to be closer to her means we had to sell Moon Court, which is it is now in the hands of a young woman and her partner and their 2 children now, and she does goddess things, and she's a doula.
Nice.
So it has been bought by a person who's taken it on.
Okay.
In the spiritual of the place.
Well, that's nice.
Yes, and we were confident that it had a story of its own and a life of its own that would continue beyond us.
Right.
But but I understand your need, the desire for a place, and we built Moon Court, and we had that ceremonial space, which was, it is a really good thing, and it will nurture. It is nurturing to have that.
Right.
So I think your goal is, is a good one. Yes.
So the other question then that arises from that is, and the discussions that I've had with my with my members of the board is, and I guess since you have been doing this work as long as you have, and you have the history that you have, and because you are one of the foremothers of this goddess spirituality, right? I mean, you are.
Yeah.
You and Miriam, Dexter, and just
many who came before me, even, yes, who were my teachers.
Right. But you guys are our teachers now. Like everybody's podcast that you did, we're all learning from you.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So we often wonder why there has never been. I dream of a unified goddess religion, right? Because if there's a church, why wouldn't there be a religion?
Right.
Thoughts?
Yes. Well,
So I have this idea. I call it Shiism.
Shiism. Oh, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Yeah. That's we're looking for words because it's such a struggle to find the right words. The language for it. So Shiism, that's a good one. And goddess as religion, and there's a bit of a section in the original on goddess as religion. Is
yes.
she a religion?
I saw that. Yes,
and she deserves the status of a world religion,
right?
Because she actually is underneath all of them.
Right.
These young gods, these young whippersnappers, Yahweh and the other guy, they rejected the goddess.
Right. There's a quote by Vicki Noble that, or maybe it was Z Budapest. I don't know. I posted something on Instagram not that long ago that was essentially saying that all religions are rooted in
her.
In her. Right.
Yeah. In Shiism.
In Shiism, right. Okay.
And
great. You're going to run with that. Pass it along.
Yeah, I might, I'll spread it. Mystical traditions of all of them are the closest. They are still in touch with those roots. So the mysticism, of Christianity, Islam, that they're all still kind of in touch with, even though many of them have been corrupted with male metaphor.
Right.
But one of the things that helped bend my brain, I had a friend, and I do give him credit in the new book, Ian Brown, his name was, who used to be able to speak the poetry of Iraqi and the ancient poets, the Sufi poets, and he could speak it with female metaphor, just off the cuff, and he could say it with just she instead of he.
That's amazing.
And that was, that for me was just mind blowing.
Yeah.
But I also got to witness the power of, like, he would do that in groups. He would be able to speak this poetry, not just to me, but to the whole group, And it was, people were just like, oh.
Yeah.
The poetic, that's part of what was at the basis of, my, ceremonies, is like creating this poetic experience for people.
Right.
And if it's a female metaphor, it creates a poetic experience with female metaphor that changes the brain. Right.
So, I mean, part of this kind of mission statement was, so I developed this Shiism thing, because I figured I wanted these churches to be rooted in something, and I had to call it something.
Yes.
But I also have kind of in the, I don't know, like community guidelines, like this is what like Orthodox Shiists believe, but you don't have to believe these things to come to the church.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's good.
Because Shiists don't proselytize.
That's right. And she births all.
Right. So it was still a welcoming environment, even if you don't believe what we believe.
Yes.
So I came up with a list of like, I don't know, I've got like 10 or 12 tenets of Shiism. I'm looking at my document. I should send this to you just so you can look it over and see what I have.
All right.
But that reminds me that the other thing I wanted to ask you about, oh, by the way, I wanted to tell you, because I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but you mentioned presenting at the Parliament on World Religions. And this year, it's in Chicago. So I would love to go up there for the day if I can, but I don't know if I can afford a ticket to get in. But they invited Liz Kelly this year.
Yes.
Did you know that?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Anyway, so this religion.
Some of my friends invited me to come. There's a good friend I met. She lives in Chicago, Anita Orlikoff. I met her in 2009.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, "Oh, why didn't you come?" I said, "Oh, no, can't do it." But yes.
Well, if you ever are in Chicago, I'd be happy to take a day trip to come meet you in person.
Yes.
When you were on Liz's show,
mm-hmm.
you mentioned the Daughters of Shining Harmony. You made a reference to the Daughters of Shining Harmony.
Lux Madriana.
And Lux Madriana, yes.
Yes.
So I have had my own saga with the Deianists and the Filianists. I have a copy of the Chapel of Our Mother God.
Right.
Are you familiar with that?
I've got a few right here as well. I went and digging in my archives.
And the feminine universe.
Mine were the coming age, but there was one here. They're all coming age. But there is this one, The Light of the Goddess, an old pamphlet.
So that's an old pamphlet from Lux Madriana?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
So Lux Madriana eventually morphed into two distinct groups, Deianists and Filianists.
Right.
Okay. Mm-hmm. The Deianists and the Filianists, the only difference between the two of them is the Deianists are like monotheists. There's one supreme God and it's goddess.
Right.
The Filianists have a whole mythology about the Trinity, but their Trinity is the mother, the daughter, and the dark mother.
Right.
Okay. Yep. There's a website called mothergod.com that I don't know who maintains it, but it's kind of defunct now. Like if you click on the contact me, no one will answer you if you send an email, but all the information is there.
Right.
Okay. So they published a book, if I have it out here or not. I don't have it out here. I have it in my office. They published a book called The Chapel of Our Mother God, the Scripture of the World's First Faith.
Mm-hmm.
And it is exactly that. It is scripture. Mm-hmm. Some of that is in the old documents of Lux Madriana. Some of it is pulled from that. Right. They claim to have channeled this scripture.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Does that sound familiar to you?
Oh, but they would. I mean, that's what people say they do.
Right.
I mean, people
they didn't want
me, did you channel this? Well, I don't use that language,
Right. No. Well, they didn't want to take credit for it, so they published this book anonymously. Yes. I bought that book. I can't tell you how long ago I bought that book. And like I said, it is written as scripture. It is very Catholic because the women that the
Yeah,
women that did this Dayanist sect were
yeah,
Catholic, or they
yes,
came from Catholicism.
yes,
So of course it reads that way. And this was a group of women at Oxford in the 70s.
yes, right. Well,
I bought that book. I can't tell you how long ago I bought that book.
yes,
So
right.
when I developed the Girlfriend God, I started posting about it on
Hmm.
social media because every time I tried to find information about these people, where were these people, these Filianists and Dayanists, and the people that published this book, and how frustrating it was because every time I tried to do research online, and I am a librarian for Goddess's sake, it's not like I don't know how to research, right?
Yes,
I could
right. Yes,
never find anything. All I ever found were like these old Tumblr accounts.
right.
And then somebody contacted me on Instagram and said, I'm a Filianist. And I
Uh-huh.
was like, after all these years of searching.
Yes,
So then they invited me to their private Discord server. And so there's this small group of people practicing this religion. And I
yes.
tried to ask them, I was like, why are you not public? Like, why are you not
Hmm.
sharing this? It's a beautiful religion.
Yes.
Why are you not sharing this with the world? And I got to tell you, Glenys, the answer is pretty much just that they're young and easily offended and can't handle criticism.
Ah, right,
So
right.
they just hide in their little private Discord server, and
Yeah, all
which
right.
I think is a real shame because they have the makings of a real religion.
Yeah, but I mean, there's if that's what they need to do in terms of, creating this kind of monastery kind of, you know, protection. That's kind of like a monastery, isn't it? You know, and their mission is not to spread it, but if they have to take care of themselves in that way, and it is, I mean, the world is a vicious place,
I
it is
know,
vicious.
but I
They
think,
can't
and
handle it. If they can't handle it, and they know they can't handle it, then it's best that they stay whole rather than get
you are
torn
much
apart.
you are much kinder than I am.
No, I mean, I have been crossed with some people that I know who've, been in the goddessing and done wonderful work, and they haven't shared it. They haven't written articles and put it out there like I have. But
Right, right.
and they haven't done that. And I do get cross about that sometimes. But it's like, well, it's not up to me to tell them. They've done what they've done and what they need to do.
Right. Well, I will have to share with you. So this private group, they had a member who's not with them anymore. Um, but it was this trans woman who obviously is also a bit of an archivist. And she was able to get into the archive at Oxford and went
Right.
through and put together like every single shred of evidence of the Filianists, the Dayanists, the Daughters of Shining Harmony, the like all the groups that came before it uh, and after it, because there were all different versions of
Right.
those groups,
Right.
going all the way back to the 50s in this house in Ireland, and they used to be known as the Screamers, and they have this whole really interesting history. So
Yeah.
she took all of those things and collated them into 4 huge volumes,
Right.
called The Clear Recital, which is essentially what the Chapel of Our Mother God came out of, um, and then the Opera Amina, volumes 1 and 2, and the Critical Apparatus, which is kind of like a bibliography. Um, I mean, I can't imagine how many years it took her to do that.
Right.
and did it for free because she was obviously very dedicated to what they were doing. And like I said, it's beautiful. I mean, there are sermons. I used one of the sermons from my Priestess at the Altar series. Because like I said, it's beautiful. And I guess I wish they were just sharing it with more goddess
I mean,
lovers.
for myself, you see, I read this stuff, and I don't even the Madrian booklets.
Yeah,
Um,
because they were very public, Lux Madriana.
yeah, and I mean, it was very important for me, in terms of being able to just reframe the whole cosmos as she,
Right,
to shift because everything, I grew up, everything is the metaphor is all male, everything's a male, even sometimes hens and cows.
right,
It was very important for me, well as, other people like Mary Daly help
right,
take the stuff out of our everyday speech.
right,
But this really was, and Starhawk was very good, but this kind of stuff really helped me, to redo the world.
right.
And there was a guy who contacted me, well, not that long ago. I've lost all the emails because my computer got upgraded and lost all the emails. But I remember his name is Race McCreed. And
That's who I'm talking about.
Race, I
Race.
I sent him an
Who's
email recently, say, Race, I've lost all our emails, blah, blah, blah. And he
Oh
hasn't
my goodness.
replied.
So Race,
And
who's now
I sent him all this stuff so he could scan it and put it up on the net, but I can't find it anymore. It's not there now.
yes, and Race is the one. That's who I'm talking about.
All
Who is
right.
now female.
All right. I didn't know that. Right.
That's just because you haven't talked to her.
For I don't know how long, but yes,
But
but I
that is
can't
why.
find
That is part of what she put together. That is part of the
it.
Amina opera. Boy, it really is a small world. That's amazing. I'm gonna have to send you the link.
Yeah.
Wait
Are
till
you
you
in touch? Are you in
wait.
touch with Race?
I was, we had a nice email exchange going on, and then she just kind of vanished. So I don't know.
Right. Right.
Doing something different now.
Yeah.
I'll have to send you a
I
link
just wish I
because
just wish it was all still up there, because I clicked on it and just like not there.
right. But it is in these the Opera Amina volumes 1 and 2. That stuff
Oh,
is in there. Not as the scanned pamphlets themselves, but the text is there.
right.
So, and she probably still has them on a hard drive somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. Because I was wanting to share some of it, I was going to share the link, but not can't do it. Yeah. Good. It is. I think it's very good for helping to wash your brain.
Well, if she's listening to my podcast, then she'll get a chuckle out of hearing us talk
Yeah.
about her. Yeah, because when I found the private Discord channel, or they invited me, I asked who is the person who painstakingly put all this stuff together, and they told me about Race, who is going by a different name now,
Yes,
and I
I
can't
imagine.
remember what it is because she changed her name
Yes.
because she's practicing Judaism now,
All
con-
right.
converted to Judaism. Yeah, I'll have to put the two of you back in touch with each other. That'll be fun. So in this season, before this episode comes out, much earlier in the season, I actually did do an episode with one of the Fillionists. She did it anonymously, so she's not on camera. There's just going to be a static image, but I did do an interview with one of the Fillionists. So stay tuned for that. Glenys, I have found this, and much like yourself and the rest of us, really, this spiritual path has taken a lot of twists and turns over the years. But now that I find myself where I'm at and I feel so firmly grounded in my beliefs, I just want to shout it from the rooftops. Don't you?
All right. Well, I guess I do, in the sense that,
Well, I mean, you wrote a second book about it, right? Isn't that kind of shouting it from the rooftops?
Yeah, well, definitely. And part of it for me was making a statement here in my homelands. Here in my homelands, family, people who know me, and I got it published in the local rag, the local newspaper. They actually did it. They actually put the photo of me and the new book so that was an achievement, and that was something I dreamed I could do.
Nice.
To come back to in this place. I mean, when I left this place, back in the 70s as a young one going off to college, I couldn't get out of here fast enough,
Right.
and couldn't imagine that I would ever come back here, for heaven's sakes, and like
Right.
it.
Right.
But I've come back to the place. I love the place, the homelands, the red dirt. The country is beautiful, the land. But the social context has changed, and I'm part of that change.
Right.
But there's a reception for what I have to offer. There is a reception, but to make a statement about it publicly,
Right.
we had a book launch here. My family came, so I got to, and I did a ceremonial sort of thing there.
Nice.
So
Nice.
that is kind of shouting it from the rooftops, isn't it? It's making a statement about, this is it. This is who I am. This is the work. This is her.
Right.
Yeah. Suck it up,
Right, right.
And I continue to, write, and I do have an urge to, put it out there. Yes. So I guess that's shouting it from the rooftops. And
Right,
if you have
right.
the same urge to, you want to put it out there, you want, as I say, we are all food for the universe. We are
Right.
all food, and we want to be enjoyed, really. We
Right.
want to be received. We want to be received.
Right.
It's part of our potency, each being's potency,
Right.
is to share it.
I never really thought about it that way, that we want to be received. I have to think on that.
Yeah, it's very much part of the poetic process as I story it. It's like,
Okay.
we wax into the fullness of being, and you're in summer solstice, it's about the fullness of being.
Right.
But in that moment of fullness of being, that the radiance is dissolving. It's the sun shares its 4 million tons in every second of itself.
Right.
And we really, each one of us desires that kind of radiance, we do desire fullness of being, but the part of fullness of being is the radiance, it just pours itself forth. And then, you go into the dark cycle. The first season is Lamas or Lunasa, whatever you like to call it.
Right.
But it's the first harvest, which is, we become the food. This is the sacred harvest. And I call it the sacred consuming. So that's shouting it from the roof. So it's sharing your being. And the question asked is, who are you feeding? We are all food, whether we like it or not.
Right, right.
Always like,
Well, and we recycle and we regenerate, right?
Yeah. And the thing to ask for in your personal life is, who are you feeding? And are you happy with the answer?
So who are you feeding?
Who are you feeding? And if you're not happy with the answer, then you can choose to make a change to that.
Right. So who are you feeding?
Right. Well, I think it's very diverse, and certainly at this point in my life, I was astonished that the new book had it crossed all kinds of boundaries,
Right.
And that's really good. So it's not just what would be called or understood as the goddess community. There was a whole deep time network the people, the people who are into Brian Swim and Thomas Berry, but even my family, my brother who's practices Christianity, a Christian boy, even he kind of got it,
Oh, good. That's
he
nice.
actually said, apparently he said to my mother as he left my book launch, he says, I think Glenys and I are on the same page. Some of my friends have been horrified.
Right.
Yeah. So
well, yeah, I mean, I always say, if you study enough religions, you come to the conclusion pretty quickly that they all have some very basic things in common, right? Like know yourself, try not to be a dick. You know what I mean? Help other people. You know what I mean? It's basic stuff, basic, fundamental, very human stuff.
Yeah. At the same time, sometimes when people say, oh, it's all the same, I think, no. Talking about God and Jesus is quite different from what I'm talking about, really.
Yes.
So, this is. So some of my friends have been a bit worried about the fact him saying we're on the same page. They go, "Oh, that's a worry."
You're right. That's troublesome.
But I get it. I do get it, because I do feel that when he talks about the Lord, that he means the universe. What I mean by the universe. Now, that's not true for all Christians. Some people don't mean the universe when they talk about the Lord.
Right.
But, it does vary across,
Right.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it just has to do, for me, again, I can't speak for anybody but me, but spirituality, because I am a human being, I have human needs, and therefore my spirituality gets put through a lot of human filters, right?
Yes.
Like, I know intellectually, I know that my creator or the progenitor or the the origin, whatever you want to call it, is genderless, a non-physical entity. I know these things, right?
Yes.
But I have mommy issues and I'm a lesbian, and so of course, I choose a goddess path, and that is what resonates for me, and that is how I interpret things. And I need female iconography and just all of those things. Right. But I don't know where I was going with that. Just so much of it is through my own human experience. But when I'm really in that place, whether it's in meditation or ritual or prayer, there is something not human going on there. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
When you're in the zone and you're like, okay, something feels very different in this moment. And it's usually, for me, it's usually very fleeting. But I know,
Gender, sex, the creativity of the cosmos proceeded very well before the introduction of meiotic sex.
Right.
So, it's because that only happened 1.5 billion years ago. We're talking about a story of 13.7 billion years as far as Western science is concerned. And so only 1.5 billion years ago was this advent of meiotic sex. Up until then, creativity proceeded just fine. And and this was an experiment. And it did cosmogenesis took a huge leap forward because diversity exploded with meiotic sex. So yes, And I write quite a bit about that in PaGaian Cosmology, in the original book.
Right, right.
And even Brian Swim was one of my main teachers. And he talks about that as, in cosmic terms. And in this book, his new book, the emphasis on becoming cosmological beings, which, is, as you say, beyond sex,
Right.
And but as you say, and for me also, the affirmation in terms of social structures, the affirmation of the female has been in dire straits now for a few thousand years.
Yes.
The young whippersnapper hero got up and said, no, mummy, I don't want to have any of you. And I'm going to have my own kind of power.
Right, right.
But of course, that's all crumbling.
I was going to say, do you think that that tide is turning back toward the feminine? I mean,
yes. Yes. Heidi Gertner-Abendroth has done some wonderful work on matriarchal societies, past, present, and future. Okay. So for a long time, a lot of us didn't even know that kind of social structure still existed in the world, but they do.
Right. Right.
And it's a different social structure, and it's one that affirms regeneration,
Right.
And as I say in the review of the Women's Spirituality trilogy, it's called Women's Spirituality. But, really, it's a spirituality that involves all. It's about a spirituality where people, everyone, no matter what gender or sex you identify with, supports the regenerative processes.
Right, right.
And, the females do, birth regeneration.
Yes, I always fall back on that. I think, how can you doubt that divinity lies in the feminine when we really are the only creatures that give life?
That's where it comes from.
Only the feminine can give life. Hello.
I do think we need to do. Sheila McGee is making a comeback. It's kind of like,
right.
It's the truth, baby.
Right. Right.
But let me see.
I do think that it's turning. I see the tide turning. I think it's all in divine timing, right?
Yeah,
everything is in divine order. I think things do cycle probably in bigger themes than we can even know, right? Like I read about this, we're apparently astrologically, we're in some 26,000 year cycle, right? Where the planets line up and make a circle in the sky or something like that every 26,000 years. We're in the middle of that, and I have a very close friend who is also my personal astrologer, and she has to explain all these things to me. Every now and then, like I'll get some random text at 2 p.m. on a Wednesday, and it'll say something like, "Oh my God, your Jupiter is sextile with the moon and Pluto, and there's a grand fire trine and blah, blah, blah." And regardless, I always have to reply the same thing. I'm like, you know that I don't understand what any of that means, and you're going to have to explain all of it to me. And we've been doing this with each other for 20 years. Right?
Right. I do think, as you say, that the time frames of Gaia, they're much longer than our time frames, and we won't see it in our generation. Hopefully, we will survive. We are in dire straits with the climate and all guys. So we do need to change our social structures, the way we organize ourselves. Just has to. We have different priorities. This war business and this. Abuse of the planet and abuse of women. It just can't keep going on, and it is crumbling, and there's a lot of pain around all of that.
Right. I mean, I've kind of a dismal view of that. Like, I think that this version of us, like, she's pretty much done with that and ready to kind of, I
Yes.
imagine that she just wipes the board clean, because for all we know, we're like, version
Yeah.
10.8565 human,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And then she just wipes the board and kind of starts over and does a checklist, right? Of like, well, capitalism, that didn't really work so well. Maybe we're not going to do that next time.
We
That's how
won't
I
let those.
that's how I envision it.
Yeah, well, we have had choice, about how we've moved,
Right,
and
right,
we sow the seeds of all of that.
right,
I am hopeful that, I'm with you on, just wipe the board.
right.
It could happen, but I actually think that if that happens, I know personally a lot of young ones who will probably survive, and
Right.
they know how to survive.
Yes.
They're doing it better than that my work has been inspiring for them, helpful for them, but they're doing it really well, raising
Yes.
families, children. So I think there may be survivors, and the work,
and there's
and
so
then there's Shiva. In other
right,
parts of the world, there are indigenous pockets of people who will survive it and be the seeds of the new whatever comes next.
right. And some of these young people, I like not the most recent generation, but the generation before that, like my niece's generation, who's still in her 20s, like mid to late 20s. They're so fearless.
Yes.
They're fearless. Like when
Yes.
my niece was like, I don't know, 24, she went to Thailand by
Yeah.
herself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think I never would have done that when I was
Yeah.
24.
Yeah.
Travel to another country where I didn't speak the language.
Yeah.
And she was like, but not her. She was like, with the backpack, I want to go to
Yes.
Thailand. And
Yes.
she bought a ticket and went to Thailand. I just think that's
Yes.
amazing to me. That's
Yes.
amazing to me.
So, I mean, yes, and particularly, young women like that. That is, something has happened. There's
Yes.
more young women and young men who are taking care of their babies really well.
Yeah.
It's different, and there's more of those, and hopefully they will be the seeds of whatever is in the
Comes
future.
next. Right, right.
But there's going to be a lot of pain. Meanwhile, in terms of as these structures crumble,
Yes.
yes,
Sometimes you have to burn it all to the ground to get ready for what's coming.
that's right. And I'm afraid to say, we might see that.
Yeah. I believe me, you can imagine what the climate's like here in the United States.
Oh, look, I went to the United States, to do my study in Berkeley, and it was a window period, it was a window
Mhm.
period, and I just caught the good stuff,
Right, right. Yeah, you wouldn't want to be here now.
and then I'm out of there.
Yeah, yeah.
I would not like to, what it's so sad because, United States, the land is so rich with so many brilliant people, and
Yes.
many who have inspired me and been part of my teachers, and yet there's all this nonsense going on, absolute nonsense. But I guess it's part of what's required for the death throes,
Right, right. Yeah.
but you've got to live amongst it, and it's like, whoa.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, we might have to deal with it on the world stage too. Can you imagine, again, this clown again at the helm of the United States? That will surely turn the tides against the United States globally.
Yes.
And so maybe that's what's required.
And you know what? And it's a real possibility.
Yeah.
It is a real possibility. But let's not focus on that.
Well, what we're saying,
let's not end on that note.
well, what we're saying is that there are seeds of hope. There are so many
Yes,
brilliant.
there are definitely seeds
And there must be brilliant young people amongst you, you know, who just say, ah, you know, but they know something different, you know?
Right. They know there's something different and they have a hope for a better future. So,
yeah.
So, all right, Glenys, I think we're ready to wrap it up. But at the end of the show, I ask all the guests the same 3 questions.
All right. Okay.
Are you ready?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Tell me something about yourself that people who know you would be surprised to learn. Could be anything.
People who know me would.
Some quirky thing. There's got to be something. Everybody's got something.
Oh, let me see. Let me see. I'm not perfect in terms of what I in terms of, you know, my everyday behavior. Sometimes I'm really grumpy. Some people might be surprised at that.
Yeah, okay. I could see that. That people would find that surprising about you. You have a fairly cheerful demeanor.
My partner, you know, of course he knows plenty about that.
Right. Not always.
Yeah, no, so that some people might be surprised to know that I get really grumpy and even depressed.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. That's fair. What is, and you know what? I've never asked this. I think you're my first international guest. Well, I had somebody in the Caribbean, but she's close enough to us that we share the same television shows. Because the second question is, what is your current favorite TV series?
Oh,
so it might be something we don't know about. Although we do get some Australian shows.
Right. You know, I don't watch a lot of television. In fact, I don't even know how to switch our television on because it's got so many buttons that I get confused. So I'm reliant. It's like if I want to watch the television, I watch it when my partner's watching, and he's what I call my cultural development officer.
Oh, okay.
He filters it everything. So I don't watch a lot of series. In fact, there's none happening right now. But the one I saw the show about Sinead O'Connor.
The most recent documentary.
And I just loved it.
Okay, that's been on our to watch list for a while. So
yes, I mean there have been Australian documentaries about the gold rush time that have been very good in terms of there is a lot happening. I think in terms of documenting, you know, the truth of what has happened.
Yes.
You white people, look at yourselves, you know, and face what happened, you know. And so any documentary or series about that, you know, is really good, and there are some around.
Okay, but we'll watch the one about Sinead O'Connor. Like I said, we've been meaning to watch that, so that's close enough. Most recent movie. It's also an acceptable answer.
Yes.
Okay, and the last question is, if your life were a movie, what would be the theme song on the soundtrack of your life?
I've got a few favorites.
Oh, but you can only pick one.
All right, I can only pick one. All right, it's Katie Lang singing "A Curious Soul Astray."
A Curious Soul Astray.
Yeah, and it comes from Cowgirls Get the Blues. It was a funny movie.
Yeah. Okay.
It was a funny movie.
With that.
But you know, Katie Lang, I think, sang the soundtrack, and she sang.
Yes, she did.
I love Katie Lang. I mean, she's just
who doesn't love Katie Lang? I mean, come on.
Yeah. So a marvelous woman, and a woman, a marvelous woman.
Yes.
No problem. I can do what I want. And A Curious Soul Astray, that song.
Okay.
If I have to choose one.
Okay. Fabulous.
The lyrics. I do want that played. I did play it at the book launch. I played She by Phoebe Alice Lou, whatever her name is.
I love that song. I love that song.
That's our religion.
Yes.
So the young ones like that are singing it, right? They know.
Yes.
And but also on my selection for my book launch was A Curious Soul Astray.
Okay.
I
Okay.
ran for the passion and glory. I ran for the new story, and yes. Away I ran. I ran away to find it, and then I came back.
So what's next for you, Glenys?
I think it's learning everything that I've been talking about for the last few decades, just sensing it more, learning it more deeply. I am traveling. We are traveling. That has opened up. So I will be going. We plan to be going to the UK, visiting the Triple Spiral in Ireland.
Okay.
My partner's homeland in Wales, and meeting Trista, my publisher in Norway.
Trista Henderson.
Trista Henderson. I'd like to meet Trista, a marvelous, amazing woman. So that is, that is on the agenda. I don't know what that will open up, of course. But
did you say you're meeting Trista in Norway?
Yes, meeting Trista. We're going to go to Norway to meet Trista as well.
Nice. Have you ever been to Norway before?
Not
Me
a place
neither. If I could go anywhere in the world, that's one of the places I would love to go to.
Right.
I think I have some ancestry in northern Scandinavia.
Yes. Yes, it's those kind of homelands, in a way, part of the ancestral homelands. It's certainly going to be part of the agenda for me. Going to the home of the Triple Spiral, which really came to me,
Right.
And I don't really need to go there, but it seems to be opening up that I will.
Right. Well, that's going to be a magical journey, I'm sure.
Yes, as long as I'm up to it physically, which is a bit of a challenge,
Right. I understand.
I've done a lot of, traveling the world backwards and forwards across the United States, Australia. So I feel like in some ways I've been there, done that. I don't really need to. There are wonderful places out there, but it's a trial these days to actually travel.
Right.
It's not like it used to be.
Right. I understand. So I have a disability, so things are not easy for me like they used to be.
Yes.
Either. And the older I've gotten, the worse it is. So I understand. I relate to that. I mean, I know. It's hard to tell that by looking at me on the Zoom screen from the chest up, but
no, I understand.
It's difficult.
Yes, I do understand that. Yes.
But we do what we can, right? At least we
can still... and I'm sort of hopeful that the energy will be there, and I'm, I do my swimming, and it just slowly I will be strong enough to, do what.
Right. Yeah. I ask for. Sometimes I ask for. So I have a lot of physical pain, but sometimes I often pray for my physical pain to be taken from me and turned into something useful.
Yes.
Because everything can be useful. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. She wastes nothing, Kelly.
Right.
She wastes nothing.
Right. So that's my pain prayer. Like, can you take this from me and just give it back to me as something useful? Just relieve me, just a little relief. That's all I want. Just a little relief.
Yes.
Just a little.
Yes, I understand. Yeah. And I think that there are more women in the world feeling this pain, and it registers as physical pain, but it's a bigger pain, and a lot of us feel it, and we feel it. It's so common amongst women, particularly.
Yes. Well, and what's really interesting about that is, so the majority of my pain is from fairly severe arthritis, largely due to multiple manual, very physical jobs I had in my youth.
Yes.
So in a lot of the episodes of the podcast, we've talked about the snake and snake mythology and the serpent and Kundalini. And so wouldn't you know, the majority of the worst arthritis I have is at the base of my spine.
All right. Yep. Same here.
Yeah. Which
Yes.
I just get a charge out of because that's where the snake is spoiled in Kundalini. So, yeah.
Oh,
It's
I
all
think
metaphorical.
it's part of a bigger pain. Yes.
Yeah.
And yeah. Mm-hmm.
I feel that. So, but you're right. She wastes nothing. Okay, Glenys. Well, the wife and the dogs are out of the office. So,
Right. Yeah.
so I'm going to sign off. You know how
Yep.
Zoom works. Screen's going to go blank, all that, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I will be in touch. Thank you so much. I'm glad that we could finally make this work.
Yeah. Thank you.
And I will be in touch. But until then, may the peace and the love of the goddess be with you.
Indeed. Thank you. And you too.
I will talk to you soon, Glenys. Thank you so much.
Okay. Good night.
Good night. Thanks for watching The Girlfriend God on YouTube. If you enjoy this podcast, the best way you can support it is to like it, follow it, leave comments on the page, rate it, review it, share it with your friends. But most of all, subscribe to this channel. And if you want more of The Girlfriend God, you can find The Girlfriend God on social media on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Thanks again for watching.